Shalom Aleichem, everybody. My name is Bechor Mosheyev. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of the Maccabee Times. For those who don't know, I launched the Maccabee Times last year because what I've been seeing in the mainstream media outlets is this failed attempt to write certain narratives that are not actually aligned with what's going on in Israel and in the broader world. So we are really excited to launch this platform. And as a special guest, we have over here with us Dr. Small. For those who don't know, Dr. Small is the executive director of the Institute for the Study of Global Antisemitism and Policy. He's a prominent scholar and public speaker specializing in the fields of contemporary anti-Semitism, including the Gelegitimization of Israel and notions of Jewish peoplehood, social and cultural theory. He's also the director of the I.S. Gapwolf Institute Fellowship Training Program, and he received his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science at McGill University, and he received his Doctor of Philosophy at the University College of London and St. Anthony's College, Oxford University. So Dr. Small, I really appreciate you coming on to our platform. I know it's Friday, Erev Shabbos, but thank you so much and really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So Dr. Small, I'm going to get right into it. Obviously, what's going on in Israel ever since the October 7th attacks. I live in New York, and it's been a mess here. There's been so many protests. People are blocking JFK. They're blocking the streets, public access roads. It's getting really bad, and I'm sure you report on a lot of this. And my first question to you is this. I actually have your report right in front of me. The report on the Qatar funding program of U.S. institutions such as Texas A&M, Cooper Union, and Cornell. In fact, today I actually read a story in the New York Post how a Qatari-funded New York City public school failed to include Israel on the map when it's educating its young students. Can you talk to our viewers more about this report that you recently published, and what do you think the implication of such actions can lead to, and what do you think we can do to combat this Qatari regime?
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. I'm honored, and the issues are important. I think that the Jewish community in the United States is finally waking up. I think after October the 7th, or perhaps until October the 6th, many people in the United States thought that anti-Semitism somehow miraculously could not happen here. We acknowledge it happens in Canada. We acknowledge it happened in the United Kingdom. We acknowledge it's in France and in Germany and in Belgium and certainly in the Middle East. But many of us in our community thought that this was an island, disconnected from the world, even in social media, that this was a special place, and it is in many ways. But we live in a globalized world, and we cannot bury our heads in the sand. I think many American Jewish people thought that the problem of the Middle East was the problem of the Israelis and the Palestinians, and that if they worked it out, everything will be okay. I think what we're realizing now with the pogrom on October the 7th, and on October the 9th, when we went back to school, when we went to meet our students and our professors, we witnessed an explosion of anti-Semitism that was beyond many of our imaginations. Even in our best universities, never mind on the streets, but in the classroom and on the campus. And I think as a way, our community really needs not only to wake up, but we need to understand who our enemy is. Who is orchestrating this? What are the social and economic and political and cultural conditions that are enabling professors to stand up in a classroom and compare Israel to Nazis? What is it that enables students to lock Jewish students into a library, fearing for their safety in Cooper Union College, a prominent college university in New York City, the heart of the Jewish community, not only in the United States, but perhaps in the diaspora? How is this possible? And I think that we as a community have to do two things: study the mind of our enemy, understand that there is a war against the Jewish people and Israel, and at the same time, I think to not allow the anti-Semitic culture to define who we are. The Nazis said we were not white. We were poisoning the purity of the white Aryan race, and we had to be eliminated. Less than 2 generations later, professors and students are telling us that we're white, and in less than 2 generations, we are now being defined as white, and not you're white and sorry for what happened and welcome to the club, but now professors and students are saying that we're white supremacists, we're racist, we're apartheid supporters, we're colonialists, we're occupiers, we're Nazis.
So this is
Staggering. In less
no,
than
but
2 generations, I'll just say this very quickly, is that the non-Jews are defining who we are. And we have to know our culture. We have to know who we are based on the Torah, based on the wisdom, based on Pirkei Avot, based on the teachings of our magnificent ancestors who's passed down incredible wisdom to us. So we have to be knowledgeable of who we are and what's happening and how to devise strategies to confront it.
well, that was actually going to be a question for a later topic, but since you actually brought it up, this is the question I want to ask you. Is you just mentioned that we as Jews have to be able to get insights from the Torah and Pirkei Avot. But why is it, do you think that, right now we have this situation where you have really good people in the media, Jewish people, activists who are going in the media and writing and saying that Israel is a democracy, which we all can appreciate, and Israel's right to exist is because it is a democracy, and they use this argument in a lot of their context. But my entire kind of what we write about is that what if Israel was not a democracy, right? What if Israel was a theocracy? Doesn't it still has the right to exist, right? So the Arab world is essentially saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist based on their teachings, based on the Quran. But Israel isn't using this religious. The Israeli government isn't using this religious argument in when it goes in debates in the UN or uh, in the public. What do you think is kind of the hesitation of us saying, Lech Lecha, we are the chosen nation of Abraham. God gave the land of Israel to the Jewish people. We are a holy nation, and we have an obligation to live in the land. And there's an obligation that, whether we like it or not, this is what we have to do. Why isn't it that we can't have this discussion out in the open, or the Israeli government can't have it? What do you make of it?
Look, so I think it's a good point in that, first of all, Israel is a democracy. It was established as a democracy. The vast majority of Jewish people and Jewish leaders since the beginning of the Zionist movement up until this moment cherish the fact that we've created a vibrant democratic country, a Jewish democratic country in our land. And I think the beauty of a democracy is, and is, on the one hand, you can practice what you just said, your understanding of what it is to be a Jew, and I commend you for it, and I am sure we agree on many issues. But in a democracy, you can sit and in the cafes, in the yeshiva, in your university, among your friends and family, and practice Judaism as you understand it. And at the very same time, a secular, liberal, socialist, even young person in Tel Aviv can go and sit in a treif restaurant and go and celebrate on a Friday night after having dinner with his family to celebrate their culture as a Western, democratic, maybe we would even say somewhat assimilated citizen of the world living in Israel. And that's the beauty of a democracy, and that's the beauty and the wisdom of the Jewish people. We are religious, and among the religious people, there's so many variations of what it means to be, from. We're secular. We're right wing and left wing. We're Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Mizrahi, Ethiopian, Indian. Now we're finding in parts of West Africa and East Africa people who identify as being Jewish and know that they were cut off from the people, from our nation. We're not just a religion, we're a people. And that they
Right.
were cut off and they're rediscovering their connections
Right.
to our people. So I think this is the beauty of what it is to be a Jew. This is what it is to believe in the continued survival and strength of the Jewish people and of Israel. And I will just say one thing. For the past year, up until the morning of October the 7th, um, the Jewish people were so divided. We were on the brink of a civil war. The religious people were saying that the secular people are not Jewish. The secular people were saying that the religious Jews are too right wing. The Mizrahi, the Sephardic, the Ashkenazi were all arguing among themselves. The people in small development towns were arguing with the people in Tel Aviv. If anything, maybe I don't want to get too metaphysical. We paid a huge price on October the 7th, and it could have been infinitely worse. And we know part of the price that we paid, and maybe this is from Hashem, is that when the Jewish people are not united, when the Jewish people do not respect every element of who we are as a people, every part of the garment of Judaism, we will be destroyed. This we know from our history.
Right, the
And
destruction of the Beth
our
Amikdash,
disunity,
that's what happened.
our disunity was a spiritual and physical threat to our survival. And if we can learn anything, we need to respect, all of us need to respect each other. All of us need to encourage each other for who we are as Jewish people. And that's the beauty of Israel. And that's
I,
the beauty
I,
of the Jewish people. I'll just tell you one thing. I don't want to go too long, but I used to live in Jerusalem. And I used to sit Friday morning in the shuk in Machane Yehuda, and I'd sit and I have my falafel from the Levy brothers falafel place in the market, and I'd sit on a milk crate, and I'd watch the people go by, old people, young people, Jewish people from Africa, from Asia, from South America, from North America, Jewish people that have been in Jerusalem for many, many generations. That mosaic of who we are as a people is a miracle. That we're all
I,
sitting in Jerusalem, they're all living in Israel. It's really a miracle, and we have to safeguard and develop that miracle every single minute of our lives.
no, I agree. I 100% agree with that sentiment. Is that we are all brothers and sisters, and we all have to unify. And we've learned in the past when we're divided people, that's where our enemies are find that moment of opportunity. I agree with that. And the only thing is, again, I just point back to just the Middle East. I read a lot about, a lot of my work about the Middle East, and some of what you reported with Qatar, right? So they're essentially, do you think that the Qatari government is trying to infiltrate the West with a radical Islamic ideology, right? So if their entire notion is that the religion of Islam and their interpretation, because I know a lot of Arab people who do not agree with what they have to say or their interpretation, the reality is that they're able to infiltrate our system, right? So what can we do from an ideological standpoint? Because I think this war is an ideological war. At the end of the day, what can we do as Jews to combat their efforts?
That's a great question, and I agree with you. This is a war of ideology. There's a kinetic war being played out in the Middle East on various fronts, but it's really about ideology. So, as I said earlier, we have to study the mind of our enemies. We should all learn about the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood was an organization or a social movement that started in Egypt about 100 years ago by Qutb and al-Banai. These were the founding intellectual fathers of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they basically fused a perversion of Islam with European anti-Semitism and fascism and even Nazism. And this was a reaction to British colonialism. So this is a reactionary, fascist-inspired, genocidal anti-Semitic movement. Anti-Semitism is at the core of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. It's not the extreme wing, it's not the military wing, it's a core element. They took the protocols of the elders of Zion, the lies that led to the Holocaust, the words and ideas that led to the Holocaust is the raison d'etre, it's in their constitution of who they are. Professor Elie Wiesel always used to teach that the Holocaust did not happen with the creation of the crematoriums and the railroad tracks. It started with words and ideas. And the very words and ideas that led to the Holocaust is the essence of what the Muslim Brotherhood is and political Islam. Not Islam, but political Islam. And this social movement is gaining strength. Iran, for example, a Shiite country, took the Sunni Egyptian idea of political Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology. This is their core belief. They want to not only destroy Israel, but kill Jewish people. Yosef Kawadawi, the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, always preached throughout his life that the true believer, the true Muslim, is obligated to finish the work of Hitler. This is the Brotherhood. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood is very close to the Qatari regime. So Qatar, the royal family of Qatar, made a religious oath to the Muslim Brotherhood. It's called the Bayah in Islam. It's like a spiritual oath. So the Muslim Brotherhood are the spiritual leaders of the royal family of Qatar, and they adhere to all the rulings of the spiritual leaders, all the edicts, all the fatwas. So here is a regime that is committed to not only eliminating Israel from the face of the earth, they're obligated to kill Jews around the world. This is a social movement that's anti-Semitic. It subjugates women. They want to kill gay people. They want to destroy democracy and destroy the United States. And they're using anti-Semitism to weaken America. Now, what Qatar has done, it's a very wealthy country. There's only 350,000 citizens, and they are funding American universities. They fund U.S. universities at a higher level than all the other countries in the world combined, including Europe, including Canada, United Kingdom. They give more money to American universities. So why are they giving money to American universities if they're such a small group, a small society? And it's to spread their ideology. So they take over Middle East studies. They take over the academic and intellectual discourse in our universities. And once you control higher education, or you don't even have to control it, you can influence it. This is where young people learn to be citizens at university, and they're learning about who Jews are, what Israel is from this twisted ideology. They also fund Students for Justice on Palestine. They're funding, these very aggressive student organizations, and it's creating an environment that's very hostile to Jews and the like. And yes, we have to be aware of who they are, how they're waging a war against us in our own country. And once you become aware of that, then as a community, we can fight back. As a community, we can demand from our political leaders not to take money from a state that wants to commit a genocide, right? And you saw the presidents of the university that are so indoctrinated in this philosophical culture in academia could not even denounce the genocide of Jewish people on their campuses. So it's a very serious crisis happening now in America.
Right, no, I agree. 20% of college age students today report denying the Holocaust even happened. So then that's just baffling to me. And like you mentioned, the regime does not respect the values of minorities, and yet you have people who are a minority. I always find it so funny. You have somebody like a young girl or a young guy who is maybe a part of the LGBTQ community, and they're going on TikTok and they're boasting about how they want to convert to Islam, and how they support ISIS and Al Qaeda, and it's just baffling to me because they'll be probably thrown off a bridge if they were in these countries. But beside the point, so do you think that obviously you just mentioned the Harvard University and old college presidents that were recently some of them resigned forcefully. What is your take on censorship? Like we have this like debate in conservative circles where do you censor, do you not censor? Like on Twitter, obviously I used to have a Twitter, I still have or X, whatever it's called. I try to stay away from as much as possible because it's such a toxic environment. But at the end of the day, you do have people that are very anti-Semitic. But what do you think that is the appropriate response? Do you think we should censor these voices, or do you think we should just provide a different alternative? Or what is your thought on this?
It's an important question. So, especially in the United States, where there's the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and there's academic freedom, that's a very important notion in a democracy, that people should have the right to speak and should have the right to think and pursue their scholarship. So it's a very integral cornerstone of democratic values and practice. But having said that, that even in the United States, which is the most free speech oriented society in the world, even here you can't walk into a cinema and yell fire, as the
Right,
as the example is. You can't go on an airplane and speak about a terrorist or a bomb. You get arrested.
right,
It's a security threat. So there are limitations, and I think in a way two things: taking money from regimes that call for genocide is reprehensible, and I think needs to be curtailed and should contravene U.S. law. You know, so that's number one. Um, and number two, I think what's happening on campus is I've met students that are being threatened with murder. They're being threatened to be raped because they're Jewish. Professors are calling out Jewish kids in class for being, associated with child killers. This is the anti-Semitic trope. So there has to be limitations on conduct. You can't intimidate people. You can't incite against an identifiable group of people, and you can't threaten people. And the university administrators, I think, need to really, get their act together because they've turned a blind eye to this horrible things. So they're taking money from an organization that wants to kill Jews. Could you imagine? Imagine if the Ku Klux Klan was funding universities to the tunes of tens of billions of dollars and creating research centers in eugenics and in biology and in theology, right? And then they would support not the Students for Justice in Palestine, but they would support the KKK Youth League. And these students, instead of coming to protest wearing COVID masks and kafirs, they would come with white sheets, with a little bit of a Nazi emblem on their white sheet. Could you imagine if this was happening at Columbia or in Harvard or at UPenn or at MIT? That free speech wouldn't exist. But when they talk about from the river to the sea and that the Jews are Nazis and have to be eliminated, somehow that's been okay, not just for the last few months, but for the last few decades. And our community needs to, speak to the administration and speak out loud and clear to our administrators, to our government officials. This is not tolerable. And I'm happy to see some universities are now going to be potentially prosecuted, potentially lose their nonprofit status, their 501c3 status, maybe their federal funding, because this needs to stop. It's un-American.
100%. I commend also a lot of the business world that have been
Yeah.
pulling money from these universities. I think it's the right step. They want to use our money, then this is the price that it comes with. And you mentioned administration. It's kind of leading into your final topics. Obviously, you probably heard yesterday. U.S. coalition with Britain is attacking the Houthis in Yemen. Um, Joe Biden the other day he was in a church in South Carolina, and somebody, a heckler, you probably saw the video, saying about a ceasefire, and he said that he's actively working with the Israeli government to limit its capabilities inside of Israel. What do you think is an appropriate, and by the way, Joe Biden, for what it's worth, and also John Fetterman is somebody who I completely did not even see coming in the way he's supporting Israel. Joe Biden has been fairly, I would say, consistent in his policy, but at the same time, I'm speaking to some Israeli officials and people on the ground, and they're saying that it's hindering their ability to carry out the task of completely eliminating Hamas. For us to completely eliminate Hamas from the face of the world, what do you think? What would you say to an American administration or to a coalition in the West of what they should do to support such an effort in terms of whether it's
I
in the
think
media or the messaging?
so. I think the answer is clear. The Iranian revolutionary regime, which calls for the not only the dismantling of the state of Israel, but for the murdering of Jews. This is a regime that believes in and propagates the protocols of the elders of Zion. This is a Nazi-inspired fascist perversion of Islamic thought regime that is antithetical to democracy. It's antithetical to whatever anybody believes in a democratic country. And for too long, the United States of America has turned a blind eye to this violent regime. It's the greatest supporter of terror around the world. Their proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in
Not
Yemen,
South Africa.
in Africa, you're right, in Syria and Iraq, they're setting the Middle East on fire. And it's time, and this is a regime that's extraordinarily close to receiving a military or obtaining a military weapon, a nuclear weapon, that they have to be stopped. So I'm pleased that Israel is diminishing significantly Hamas's military capability, and I hope the Western world will stop what's happening in Iran, in Yemen, because the Iranians are supporting the Houthis rather, and with Hezbollah, they're armed to the teeth by Iran. So I think their proxies have to be put in check. But ultimately, it's Tehran. We have to stop Iran. We have to stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. We have to stop them from not only calling for genocide and supporting terror, they're terrorizing their own people. They're terrorizing so many ethnic minority groups, women, people who are moderate Muslims who want to just live in a free society. And we really, these are the people that need to be stopped. This is the cause of a lot of these problems, very serious problems.
Right. And a lot of our focus has also been on the Arab world, and something I saw that you did work on is this rise of Christian nationalism. And also we see it on a Christian, you would say, in Italy, how there was just 1,000 people, in Nazi uniforms, and what is kind of some of the research that you do on this aspect, on the Christian nationalism? Where do you think like it's heading, or what do you think is the root cause of this?
So I don't want to get too esoteric or abstract, but basically, I think in a sense we're living in a global economic crisis with neoliberal, globalized relations. In the 1980s, there was structural adjustment. The leaders of the largest democratic countries wanted to have to weaken the state, to have more free markets, and they believed that in free market economics would cause more. As the economy develops, there'll be more democracy. So as the state was being weakened to allow free markets to become more prominent, the radical Islamists, they also want to destroy the state because they think it's an instrument of Western domination, right? So you have neoliberalism and radical Islam wanting to weaken the state, and the states have been weakened. Some states are failing. Some societies, their governments don't function. Many more societies are becoming more fragmented socially, economically, politically, culturally. It's even happening in our country. And what's happening is that in these times of economic crisis, people are fearful of their future. So extremists become attractive. They give easy answers. And what's happening is that the radical right, the radical left, and political Islam is attacking the democratic center. And what do they do? And we know this from our history. A good scapegoat helps with the rhetoric. It's almost the anti-Semitism is the fuel for the social movements to empower them. So I think there's an attack on the democratic center by extremists, and anti-Semitism is being used by all three social movements, and it's a problem. So you're right. White supremacy and Christian nationalism, anti-Semitic Christian nationalism, is also increasing in the United States, in Canada. White right-wing nationalism is also increasing in parts of Europe and in Hungary and Greece, other countries. So yes, this is it's a time of crisis.
So they're pretty much, no matter where we turn, right? There's some unifying aspect of all these different sections. Is the
Yeah,
Jews are responsible for all the world's problems? It's
we're in
nothing
the
new the past
we're in the
2,000 years.
center. Yeah.
That's what would you say in a final remark? Just a message. You said we have to be strong as a Jewish community. But what would you just give like a final message? Because New York City is where I am. It's home to the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. And a lot of times, we go. A lot of people, they go into New York City subway system, and they feel sense of uneasiness. They don't know what can happen. They're going to work, and they're sometimes afraid they're not even going to come back. So, what would you say, some words of inspiration of what we can do during these challenging
Yeah.
times to strengthen our spirit?
First of all, it's terrible and pathetic that you should be even asking a question like this in 2024. But your questions, tragically, is very important and appropriate. Look, as I said earlier, we have to be strong. We have to know who we are. We have to define ourselves based on our values, based on our teachings, based on our wisdom. And we can't allow, little punks in the universities to define us. We can't allow the media to define us, or politicians, or radical Islamists, or left-wing intellectual extremists. We have to know who we are. If we know who we are, none of this noise will have any impact on us. So that's number one. Jewish consciousness, I call it. Learn, study, learn from the magnificent wisdom that we have, and respect our elders who have a bit of the wisdom. And at the same time, our community has to get stronger and strengthen our institutions, our educational institutions from an early age to university level. We should give our members of our Jewish community a strong Jewish education. We have to strengthen, unfortunately, some of our security institutions in our communities. That should be important, so that when you go in public on a subway, if we get self-defense courses, or there's institutions that will protect us, we'll know what to do and how to act. That's important. We'll know, how to call 911 or the police, or etc. And I think, yeah, so to be proud, to be vigilant, to go about our business, to remember we're still living in a very strong democratic country. The institutions are here to serve us as citizens. And yeah, we should be strong, proud, and carry forward.
Dr. Small, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it, and good Shabbos to you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for having me. I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you.